my name is Hope. This is Athena. She's going to be doing my test out with me today. Do you have any injuries I should know about with the body?
I broke my pelvis years ago.
Broke your pelvis years ago. Okay, perfect. And then do you mind if I have any hands-on adjustments?
Not at all.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to start laying down on your back. And your feet are going to, or your knees are going to be bent. Your feet are flat on the floor, hip distance apart, and she is in neutral spine. Keeping that little space in her low back, her pelvis in her arch is in that neutral spine, the natural curve of her spine. And then imprinted would be if you're tilting your hips, your pelvis back towards your belly button, and that back goes flat onto the mat. But for these exercises, we're gonna stay in that neutral spine. Her arms are going straight up to the ceiling, palms are faced together. From here, she's lowering those palms down to her hips, opening out into a wide V, and then letting those arms go back shoulder distance apart. Again, you can go one, exhaling on the way down, inhaling on the way up, and one more here. This is our closed kinetic chain exercises. And then from here, your arms are going to go back down to the side, palms are faced onto the mat. We're going to go into our open kinetic chain exercise, lifting both feet up off of that mat. Her knees are right over her hips. Her heels are right in line with her knees, going for this 90-degree angle we call tabletop. She's still in that neutral spine, keeping a little space in her low back. Her fingertips are going to go to the side of her head, and we're going into our chest lift. Nodding her chin to chest, her head and shoulders lift off the mat, looking at those inner thighs, and then slowly rolling shoulders, neck, and head back down to the mat. She's exhaling on the way up and inhaling on the way in, pulling up through her abdominals, trying not to lift with her chest. And you have one more here. Lifting all the way up, keeping that neutral spine, and lowering all the way back down. We now have our spinal extension on prone. So we have our first beginner move. If you want to roll over to your stomach, feet go flat onto that mat. Swan is intermediate. Your hands are right underneath those shoulders, flat onto the mat. Your fingertips are face forward. Your head and gaze is right down on that mat. And then from here, you're pressing through the palms of your hands to lift your chest and head up. Your gaze is going to go right there in front of you, and then slowly lower all the way back down. Squeezing those glutes, squeezing the legs together, again pressing all the way up, feeling that extension throughout the arms, and lowering back down. This next one here, lifting all the way up, and slowly lowering back down. And then we are going to go right into that double leg kick. Your arms are going to go right, your hands are going right to your low back. So your fingertips are intertwined, kind of holding each other. And your head, your gaze is going to be facing towards the door over to your right. From here, both legs are kicking back to your glutes. One, extending out. Two, extending back out. On this next one, as the legs extend, the arms extend long and the chest is lifted up, extending both long. And then dropping your gaze out. Gaze now goes towards the mirror. And then we can go again, kicking one, extending long, kicking two, extending long. And last one here, you're lifting up that chest, extending the arms and legs long, pulling up, and lowering all the way down. Your gaze goes towards the door. We're going to one more here, two, and this next one, extending arms, legs, chest long, squeezing those glutes, pulling up through your chest and lowering back down. And then if you want to go back onto your back, my apologies, we forgot the advanced exercise for our spinal extension. So for this advanced exercise, we're going to go into our hundreds. Both legs are first going to start going up into tabletop and then extending out to a 45-degree angle, normally where that blue light is across in that room. Your head, chest is going to float up, chin to chest, arms go long, hovering off the mat. You're going to start just pumping your arms up an inch and down an inch. No breaks in that arm. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. As you do this, try to pull that belly button to your spine, pulling up through those abdominals, not through that neck, straightening the arms and the legs. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Last one. And exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Lower the head back down to the mat. Legs can go to the mat and arms. We are now moving to our spinal lateral flexion, going straight into that mermaid exercise. You're going to sit up facing that wall right here, going into a Z sit. So one leg is crossed right in front of that body. Your heel is going to your knee, and then this leg is going long down by your side. You're sitting up nice and straight and tall. Shoulders are away from your ears, still in that neutral spine, having that natural curve in your spine. This arm, your left arm, the palm is going flat onto that mat. The right hand is extended, long palm up to the ceiling. From here, you are going to slowly lift your fingers up to the ceiling. And once you get there, you're curling over, bending that palm arm slowly as you extend, feeling the extension throughout that body. And then extending this palm arm long, lifting all the way up and restarting. Continue that, lifting all the way up. As you do this, keep those shoulders away from your ears. Squeeze those shoulder blades together. Keep that glute onto the mat, your right glute, and then lift all the way up. You have one more here. Lifting up and over. That chin stays away from your chest. Your gaze is right in front of you. And lifting all the way up. Perfect. That hand can go down. We're going to go into our spinal rotation exercise. So you're now sitting facing towards this end. Your feet are long, your legs are long, your feet are flexed. Your arms are going to go out to a T. You have a nice extension throughout that chest. There's no breaks in your arms. You're looking right in front of you. You're first going to keep those arms straight, twisting at your chest to the mirror. 1, and pulsing for 3, 2, 3. Arms come back to center, and you're now rotating towards that mirror. 1, for the window. 2, 3, coming back, and you have 2 more here. Nice and tall. Really think about wringing out, if you're wringing out your abdominals. Last one here. And coming back to center, arms can go back down to the mat. And we have our side lying series here. You're going to be laying on your side, facing towards that window, towards that door. You have a nice straight long line down your body. That bottom arm is bent right underneath your head, and then your hand is right in front of that chest. Squeezing those glutes, squeezing your abdominals. Your gaze is right in front of you. So we have this nice long line. We're first going to start in going into our leg raises. The bottom foot can either be bent, or the bottom leg can either be bent or extended. We're going to have it extended, and the top foot is going to be flexed. Top foot is flexed. From here, you're lifting that leg up, keeping those hips stable and lowering back down. You can continue that. Try not to let those hips rock around. If they start to rock around, you're going too far. Just lifting that leg right above that hip and lower back down. You have 1 more here, lifting all the way up and lowering down. Great. And now you're going to bend both legs. The knees are right in a diagonal with those hips, and then your feet are right in a diagonal with those knees. Keeping the whole foot together, you're just going to lift this top knee up to the ceiling and then lower it back down. Try to keep that hip stable and lower it back down, squeezing at those glutes. Still in that nice long straight line down your body, and you have 2 more. And inhaling and exhaling on the way up, and inhale on the way down. Great job, and that is it for mat. We are now on to the reformer. Athena is laying down on her her back. Again, in that neutral spine, that little space is in her lower back, pressing her sacrum into the carriage. Her arms are long down by her side. And our springs for our first beginner footwork is 2 reds and a blue. Her heels are onto that foot bar, hip distance apart, flex back. And on her next exhale, she's going to extend that carriage all the way out, bending her knees and bringing the carriage back home. You can continue this. A variation of this, I'm gonna reach over you. You can take that ball in between her knees. As she does this, to keep proper alignment, that knee is right over her hips. And then you can bring it back home. You're gonna place the ball back over to the side and change her springs. So 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 green. Her heel is still onto that foot bar, and she's going to take 1 leg into tabletop. 1 leg goes into tabletop, and then as she extends the carriage out, she's going to extend that leg straight up to the ceiling. And as she bends the knee, her leg comes back down straight. So she's keeping a straight leg, lowering and lifting. Yes, we can extend straight, and then lower down straight, extend straight back up, and lower straight down. Keeping that foot parallel, trying not to let it turn out. Just hold that foot here. She's still in that neutral spine. And last one here. Great. So I'm now going to change the springs 1 more time. We are on 2 reds and a green. 1 foot is on to that bar. We're actually going to move to her toe. So 1 toe is onto the foot bar. The other leg is floating into tabletop. From here, that heel is slightly lifted, and as she extends the carriage, she's going to try to keep it in one place to build strength and stability throughout that angle. As she extends out, she's lifting the leg up to the ceiling, holding everything right here. She's just circling that foot towards her midline, and then reversing the circle. Reversing that circle. And then as she bends, that knee goes back into tabletop, and then she can do it again. That leg goes straight up to the ceiling, extend out. You can go into those circles, circling around, and then reversing that circle. As she does it, she's keeping those hips parallel. She's not letting them rock back and forth, bending both knees, bringing that leg to tabletop. And the last one here, extend all the way out. Leg comes up, and we're circling, keeping those hips parallel, spacing her low back, reversing that circle, bending the knee, and coming back home. We're now going to move to our bridging. So I'm going to change the springs back to 2 reds and a blue. Athena is going to be onto her heels, hip distance apart, and that headrest is completely down to protect her neck and cervical spine. Her palms are flat onto that carriage, tucking her, your heels are on hip distance apart, flexing those feet back to keep your feet engaged. Belly button goes to spine, and then you're curling your hips towards your belly button as you're lifting those glutes up to the ceiling with an exhale, squeezing them with an inhale, and then lowering all the way back down with an exhale. So as we do this, to keep those knees still in alignment, we can add that ball right above the knees and between the thighs, keeping those feet parallel to each other. She's lifting all the way back up with an exhale, squeezing the glutes and lowering all the way back down with an inhale. Keeping that space between her chin and her chest. We have 1 more here. Lifting all the way up, keeping that carriage all the way to the stopper, pulling the tailbone to the foot bar, and lowering all the way back down. Great, on this, take the ball, place it off to the side, and we're going to change your springs to 2 reds. 2 reds, both heels are onto that foot bar, feet are flexed back, and we're going into our knee extensions. Belly button goes to spine, curl those hips towards her belly button, and lift up to your full bridge with an exhale, keeping that carriage pulled in the stopper, holding that whole bridge. You're going to press through your heels to extend your carriage all the way out, and then bending your knees, bringing that carriage back home. And then you can continue that. You see how Athena keeps those glutes lifted off of the carriage. She's maintaining that neutral spine, keeping those feet parallel, try not to let them turn out. You have 1 more here. And bending the knees, bringing that carriage all the way back home. You're slowly going to pull down your spine until those glutes hit the mat. And our last advance, that was last advanced bridging series here. She's lifting one leg into tabletop. We're staying on 2 reds. That heel is still onto the foot bar. And from here, she's tucking the belly button to spine, curling hips to belly button, and slowly rolling all the way up her spine into a full bridge. Exhaling all the way back down. She's exhaling on the way up. Inhaling while she squeezes those glutes, and exhaling on the way back down. She's maintaining that tabletop position. Her knee is right over her hip. Her heel is right in line with that knee. She's keeping those hips stable and parallel right to the ceiling, not letting them rock around. And the last one, and lowering all the way back down. You can place that heel onto the foot bar. And I'm gonna look at our next one. Hands and straps. So we're now going to change her springs to 1 red and 1 blue. For your hands and straps, she's going to reach behind her for the short loops. The short loops are going into the palms of her hands, and her legs are going to float into tabletop, just lifting those feet off the foot bar. You see she still has that 90-degree angle with her legs. Her arms are going straight up to the ceiling. From here, she's pressing her palms down to her hips, straight arms, and lowering back, or lifting back up to the ceiling. Try not to let those arms pass your shoulders. She's exhaling on the way down, inhaling on the way up, pointing those feet. This is our beginner hands and straps. And this next one, she's going to go right to the advanced version. As she lowers her hands down, she's lifting up her chin to her chest, looking in between her thighs, and also extending those legs out to that blue light for 45. And then as those arms lift back up to the ceiling, she's bending her legs in. Her head goes back down to the foot bar. You can continue that. Arms lower, legs lengthen, pulling up through those abdominals. Try not to use the neck to curl all the way up. And you have 1 more here. And lower all the way down. She's still maintaining that neutral spine. And then from here, we're going to move the long loops into the arches of her feet. Long loops, arches of her feet. She's still on 1 red and 1 blue. Both legs are going straight up to the ceiling. Her arms are long down by her side, and she still has that little space in her low back. Her feet are parallel and pointed to each other, and she's keeping that tailbone glued to the mat. From here, she's lowering her legs down to that blue light, 45, and then lifting all the way back up to the ceiling, again, maintaining that tailbone onto the mat. If she moves too far down, her hips might just start to arch forward, going for too big of an arch in her back, and we don't want that to happen. And then lifting all the way back up. You have 1 more here. Exhaling on the way down, inhaling on the way back up. Great. And then you're going to take both legs into tabletop. Your feet are together. Those knees are right above your hips. So if you want to move them out just a hair, those feet are flexed. She's extending the bottoms of her feet to the blue light and then bending those knees back in. This is for our bend and stretch. And then you're welcome to place your hands right up on those hips to make sure that you're not really collapsing those thighs into your stomach. Maintaining that neutral spine. Exhaling and extending. Inhaling. You have 1 more here. And extending long back out. You can now bend those knees and take those loops off of your feet and place them back to those black pegs behind you. You're now going to change your springs to 1 blue. We are now taking the springs to 1 blue. We just changed those springs. I think it's going to sit all the way up. And then she is going to turn around to face the mirror. And then grab those long loops. She's right almost to the very edge of that reformer, but not yet. From here, her arms are going long out in front of her. Her palms are faced up to the ceiling. From here, she has her shoulders away from her ears, sitting up nice and straight and tall. If there's a string pulling from the top of her head, she's in that best posture. She's pulling those palms back behind her, keeping those elbows right in line with her shoulders, and then extending those arms long back out. Continue that. Pull those palms forward and extend back out. You have 1 more here, belly button to spine, sitting up right up on those sits bones. And then from here, your arms are going to stay long. And your palms are going to be faced in towards each other. We're going to our back rowing. You're tucking your belly button to your spine, and then slowly curling your hips to your belly button, bringing those hands to your chest. As you do this, you're lengthening your arms out to the side, turning your palms to face behind you. Then from here, you're bursting through that curtain, leaning forward, your arms come back behind you, circling those arms around to your toes. Your palms go back towards your body, and then you're sitting up nice and tall. Again, she's going to continue that. As she does this, she's really curling all the way back, feeling those abdominals, lengthening those arms out to the side, palms go back. Push those hands back as she leans forward, and circling those arms back around, palms go into the body, sitting up nice and straight and tall. You have one more here. Those toes are pointed, her legs are nice and long, out to the side, palms behind you. Pushing those palms back as you lean forward. Your forehead goes to your knees, palms go up. Good job. And then we're going to turn around. So you're going to turn around, face those long loops back. You're standing up right against those shoulder blocks, and she can either have a couple different options. She can be crisscross applesauce, the legs can be extended. From here, she is going to flex those feet since she shows extension. Grabbing those long loops, she's going to serve a tray. Her fingertips are out towards the aisle. Her elbows are right in by her side. She's again sitting up nice and straight and tall. Belly button to spine. She has that nice curve in her back, her natural curve. She's just pressing those fingertips to the aisle with that exhale, bringing her elbows back into her body with an inhale. Again, this is serve a tray. Great job. Continue that. And then bring those elbows back in. And then our next, bringing those elbows back in, our next variation here is shaving the head. So she's bringing those elbows behind her head as she's slightly hinging forward. She's making a wide diamond shape with those hands. Her thumbs are pointed down towards those shoulder blocks. And from here, she's pressing her palms out diagonally to that ceiling, and then bringing them back in. Her elbows are wide, belly button to spine. Her gaze is up. She still has that space between her chin and her chest. She has one more here. The legs are still long. And then bring it all the way back home. Those long loops can go back up to those black pegs. And we are going to grab our short box. Grabbing that short box. And replacing all springs on it. She's going to sit up onto that box, right in the middle of the box. Her legs are lengthened. She is having those feet go under the safety strap. Very important to keep her nice and safe. She's sitting up nice and straight and tall. And the backs of her hands are going to go right over her forehead. One hand is stacked right up on top of the other. And she's flexing those feet, pulling back on to that safety strap. From here, she's rounding her back and she leans back. Once she gets to that lowest point, she is rotating towards the mirror. Rotating, bringing it back in front, and rounding all the way back up. Round up or round down with rotation. And then you can continue that rounding back to that lowest point. And you're rotating now towards the front door, really bringing out those abdominals back to center and rounding all the way back up. Go for one more on each side, exhaling as you round down, inhaling as you're twisting, and exhaling as you're rounding back up. She's really pulling those abdominals in close. And your last one, shoulders are staying away from her ears. As she does this, she's really twisting, keeping those legs lengthened. And then we're going to go into a more advanced series, our airplane series. Athena, if you want to step off, Athena has some issues. When we were doing this before, her piriformis was hurting her. It was feeling a little hunched in, so we're going to gear her out one, picking it up. So she has some extra room to lengthen this leg. So we're going to be facing towards the front door. This leg right here that is closest to the foot bar is lengthened long. Again, that foot is going right up underneath that strap. This foot is bent in close to her body, and then her arms are going out to the T. Her shoulders are staying away from her ears. From here, she is shifting her weight out towards the back of the reformer, tilting those arms now she's rotating her chest towards that headrest. Her gaze goes down towards the ground, and then she's going back to that tilting motion, and then shifting all the way back up. Again, we can continue this, shifting that weight, tilting it, your arm goes up to the ceiling, rotating towards the ground, your gaze is towards, and then you're going back to that rotation and shifting all the way back up. As she does this, her arms are staying long. You can continue that, belly by the spine. She's rotating her body, feeling that full extension and rotation. And you can go all the way back up. And then we're done with our short blocks. We're going to head off of that short box. Flex this back in. Long box. We change our springs to one blue. And Athena is going to go onto this long box. Her head is out towards that mirror. Her chest, her sternum is off of that box. And she's really anchoring in her hips to that box, pressing those hips. She's squeezing the glutes, engaging those legs. From here, she's going to take the long loops. And she's going to go place her arms out to the T. Those arms are right in line with her shoulder. She has this nice straight line down her body. And then from here, she's pulling those palms back to her hips. Her head is staying towards that ground, and then you're extending those arms back out. In a moment, we'll add a variation, just pulling those back, going for your T press. She's squeezing those glutes, keeping everything engaged. You know, one more like this. And then arms go back out to the T, squeezing those shoulder blades together. On this next variation, we are going to add the variation. As her arms comes back, she's lifting up that chest, lifting through her low back. And then you can extend out. And then she's going to add the next variation as she brings the arms and the chest. She's going to be adding a slight lift of those legs. And then you can extend out. We'll go for two more like this, adding the full extension, the full variation, lifting up those legs and lowering. You have one more like this, all the way up, and extending back long. Great job. Those long loops are going to go on to that foot bar. You can step off of the box. Take this box all the way off. And we're going to go into our planks. Changing the spring to one red spring. She's going to hop up onto the reformer. Her feet are going right up against these shoulder blocks. Her hands are onto that foot bar. Her hands are shoulder distance apart. And then from here, she's pressing her legs out long until she's in her full plank here. Full plank here. We're going for our jackrabbit. From here, she's bending those knees into her chest and extending out long. The gaze right down to that gray platform. Squeezing, she has this nice long and straight line down her body, and those knees are coming right in underneath her hips. And then for this one, you're going to take the carriage all the way home, lifting those shoulders back up to the wrists, and then her feet are long right up against these shoulder blocks. We're going into our up stretch. From here, she's extending the carriage long, pressing through the heel of her hand as she's lifting up those heels. From here, she is now going to lift those hips. From here, she's extending the carriage even longer, pushing throughout her heel, and then she's bringing the carriage back home. Shoulders go over the wrists, those feet go down, and then she's going back into that flat position, going into that kind of downward dog. The hips are right over the heels as she comes home, bringing the carriage all the way back in. And then as she comes home, feet land, heels land, and she's pressing those hips back over her heels. The last one here, bringing that carriage all the way home, and then pulling all the way up. And then you can carefully step off of the reformer. That was our plank. We're going to go into our jump board series now. Grabbing the jump board, you can use the jump board as the ledge. This little wood piece is going to go right behind those shoulder blocks. And then if Athena was pregnant, So you want to step right here. You're going to sit down, sorry. Keeping her elevated. You're going to lay back on this wedge. And then if we were doing footwork again, we can place 2 ribs in a blue back on those springs. Heels are onto the foot bar. Hip distance apart. And then she can go back into her footwork, extending all the way out. Inhaling, bending the knees, and bringing it back home. Just continuing that. See this wedge? Just keep your nice and elevated. You have the last one here. And then you can second once more. And then you can carefully step off the carriage before we go into our jump board series. Nice and tight. We're moving those springs back to 1 rep. Athena's going to lay onto her back. Again, she's in that neutral spine, pressing the sacrum into the carriage, keeping the little space in her low back. Her feet are parallel onto that jump board. Her arms are long down by her side, and when she jumps, she's going to be landing toe ball heel at the top of that jump board. When you're ready, you're just going to start jumping out. Landing toe ball heel carefully, softly landing on that jump board. And then your next jump, we're going to go into that Pilates V, heels together, toes apart. Gluing, cinching up through those inner thighs, squeezing those legs together, keeping that neutral spine as she's jumping. And then we're going to go into our moguls. Your feet are going parallel, glued to each other. As you jump, you're landing to the right and to the left, keeping those hips onto the mat, just turning at your legs. Yeah, you can keep those hands onto your hips. You have 1 more. And bringing the carriage all the way home. We are done with the reformer. All right, we are now at our springboard. We are starting with our roll down. So we place those yellow springs at number 8, and we also replace these handles with our roll down bar. Athena is holding that dowel on the outside of the springs. Her feet are straight, her feet are flexed against that wood rod on the springboard. She stands sitting up nice and straight and tall. And from here, she's going to slowly roll down her spine, tucking chin to chest, curling hips to her belly button, and rolling all the way down, keeping those arms straight until her head hits the floor. She's stopping here, pulling the dowel into her chest once, extending those arms, and then tucking chin to chest, slowly rolling all the way back up until she gets to that straight back. Again, you're going to repeat that, exhaling on the way down, curling down that spine. When she hits the ground, she's in that neutral spine. She's pulling the dowel, her elbows go to the side, tucking chin to chest, slowly rolling all the way back up. Those feet are staying flexed, her arms are straight, and we have 1 more here. Tuck the belly button to the spine, curl those hips, pull that dowel all the way to the chest, extend it long, and roll all the way up. Perfect. All right, and then we're going to go into our side bend. So Athena is going to lay on her side, yes, facing towards that front door. She's on this side, as this is her stronger side. Sorry about that. Her top leg is back, and then her front leg is forward. Her heel and her toe are just touching, and then she's holding that dowel. The springs are still at number 8, those yellow arm springs. Her bottom arm is extended long. Her palm is faced up towards the ceiling. And then from here, keeping this dowel arm straight, she's curling her head, trying to lift that shoulder and arm up, and then going all the way back down. As she does this, she's pulling up through that oblique, pressing through her feet, lifting all the way up. You have 1 more here. Lifting all the way up, curling up through that oblique, lifting the bottom shoulder, the bottom oblique, and then lowering back down. Her gaze is straight, and I can take it down from you. And you are done with that. If you wouldn't mind standing up. We're replacing the dowel now with those arms, or those handles. So the handles are going back onto those yellow springs. And then from here, she's going to step back back to the springboard, holding those handles. And then she stepped away from the springboard until there's just enough tension on those springs where she can still pull them back. We are going to go into our chest expansion. From here, palms are staying open and straight. She's pulling the palms back behind her glutes and then extending her arms back forward. As she does this, she's expanding that chest. Shoulders are staying away from her ears. Her gaze is forward in front of her, pulling that belly button to the spine and thinking if there was a nice tall string. As she does this, we're going into our full chest expansion. Arms stay back behind her. She's looking at the front door, looking in front of her, looking at the back door, and then back in front of her. It's all right. You can do this next one. In front of her, front door, in front of her, and then release that tension. So we're only going to pull back, look at the back door, look in front of you, look at the front door, look in front of you, and then release that tension. We have one more here. You're squeezing those shoulder blades together. Exhaling through your nose as you pull it back, inhaling, and then exhaling as you release that tension. We're now going into our next exercise. We're going into our hug a tree. So she's going to stand now facing towards the aisle. Grab those springs again, and she's going to go into a staggered stance. One foot is going to be more forward than the other. Her feet are parallel to each other. Her toes are pointed right towards the aisle. Again, she's standing up nice and tall and straight. And then from here, she is going to take those arms out to the side, right in line with her shoulders. Her arms are slightly bent. From here, she's pulling her fingertips right in front of her chest, tapping them together, and then opening back out to the side, making sure not to let those arms past her shoulders. As her arms come back, she's squeezing those shoulder blades together, and she has that nice circle in between her arms. As she does this, once those fingertips hit, you have one more here. And great job, you can drop those springs. And then you're going to now face towards the back door, grabbing that front spring. We are going into our adduction series. She's holding that fist with the handle, and then that elbow goes out to the side, facing towards the springboard. From here, she's just pushing that fist towards the aisle, and then releasing it. As she does this, her palm is faced in towards her body, and squeezing, sitting up nice and straight and tall, squeezing the glutes. Her feet are hip distance apart. You have one more here. Great job. And then from here, you're going to take that elbow and glue it to the side of your body. Don't let it move from there. Keeping that fist onto the handle, you're pressing your palm to your stomach and then releasing it back out. Again, try to keep that elbow. You're not letting it move away. Just keeping it right next to your body. And then while she does this, she's not letting that arm go past her shoulder. She's keeping it right in line, that 90-degree angle. That elbow is bent. Sitting up nice and straight and tall. She still has that nice curve, her natural curve into her back. And you have the last one here. Great job. You can drop that handle, and we're going to go into our leg series now. She's going to be laying onto the mat. The purple springs are at number 4 on the springboard. So grab that, and then you're going to place those long ropes or these loops over the arches of her feet. Her legs are going straight up to the ceiling. Her arms are long down by her side, and she is just enough away from the springboard that she has tension on to these springs. She's in that neutral spine, pressing her sacrum, which is right above that tailbone, into the mat, keeping a little space in her low back. And then her arms are actually going to float behind her, holding onto that wood piece that is connected to the springboard to the wall. Her legs are lowering to the 40 through 45. As she does this, she's still keeping that little space. And that blue light across the room that's where her feet are going to be. From here, she's going into an external rotation. Heels are together, toes are apart. She's going to go into her beats, just opening and closing fast, trying to keep those springs together. Try not to let them move. And you have 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Both feet can go back to parallel, lift back up to the ceiling. She's going into her walks now. As she does this, she's just lowering one foot a couple inches, holding that foot there. Now this foot is now lowering past the other foot, holding it there. She's just lowering just a bit below the other foot. And then when she's ready, she's going to walk back up. As if she were walking, She's just lowering and lifting, still keeping that neutral spine, that space between her chin and her chest. Her gaze is up to the ceiling, holding on to that one piece onto the floor. And we have one more here, walking all the way down and all the way up, keeping those springs nice and still, pointing the toes. Great job, and she is done with the springboard. Okay, so we are now on the Cadillac. There are differences and similarities between the springboard and the Cadillac. So the difference is that the springboard is just a variation of the Cadillac. It doesn't have this whole side, the open side, and the bars up at the top. It only has the closed side of the Cadillac, where you can place springs on and do your arm springs and your leg springs. All right, so we are going to start with our teaser from spring above. So, Athena, if you want to stay right there for a second while I place this on. She is now lifting this up, going to lay all the way down, flat onto that back, and then I'm lowering this down. Your hands are going to go shoulder distance apart, and then from here she's bending her elbows, bringing that bar to her chest, extending the bar all the way past her head. Back, you can switch a little forwards. Extending that bar all the way past her head, and then lifting that bar right in front of her face, bending at her elbows as she does this. She's tucking chin to chest, lifting up her shoulders and legs at the same time, pushing that bar up, going into her full teaser, and then repeating, slowly lowering legs, slowly rolling all the way down that back, going to a C curve, bending her arms. That bar goes over her head, bending the arms, bringing it back in, exhaling as she goes up into this full teaser, squeezing all together, legs together, and then lowering back down. We have one more here. That bar is going right over her face, and then lifting all the way back up into that full teaser. Great job. And then you can lower all the way back down to the mat. If you wouldn't mind stepping out really quick, we're going to go into our swan. So she's going to be laying prone onto the mat. And then from here, I'm going to slide this bar right underneath her. Her arms go long. If you want to scooch back just a hair, scooch back, I got the bar. And then you can reach long for that bar here. So as she pulls the bar to her head, she is extending the arms long, lifting up the chest for going into her swan. Lifting up that chest. The bar just comes slightly forwards, and then she's lowering her chest back down. As she does this, she's squeezing that back, squeezing those glutes together, squeezing her thighs, her legs all together. Her gaze is right in front of her at that wall. Her shoulders are staying away from your ears. Her arms are nice and long, and she's just lifting up all the way into that belly button. We have the last one here. All the way up. And lowering back down. I'm going to take this bar. You can bend your arms and then scooch all the way back. Move all the way back. Perfect. And then I'm going to take the bar. And our next exercise. And then from here, we're going to go into our scapular isolation. So I'm going to take off this blue spring. Yeah, if you want to step off to the side, I'm going to take this. And we're replacing the blue spring onto this bar. As we do this, we are making sure to add our safety strap so that bar, for some reason, does not come down and hit Athena in her head. We would not want that to happen. This very edge. Woo. Grab that bar. Circle it around. Circle. Circle. One last one here. And then move it onto that clip. That bar comes down. And then the spring is right on this little flap so we don't damage the Cadillac. All right, and then Athena, if you wouldn't mind, come lay supine on that mat. The bar is right underneath those shoulders. We're holding it here. Your arms are gonna go long. Arms are long, straight up to the ceiling. Keeping those arms long and making sure not to bend it. You have your neutral spine, that little space is in her low back. Her knees are bent, her feet are placed flat onto the ground. Her gaze is up to the ceiling, keeping that space between her chin and her chest. She's from here just going to lift those shoulder blades off of the mat, extending those arms. Your head can stay onto the mat, and then lower your shoulder blades back down. And arms stay straight. You're just lifting and lowering those shoulder blades. And then lower those shoulder blades back down. Continuing that exhaling as you lift up. Make sure you keep that little space in your low back. And we have the last one here. Great job. You can bend those arms and take it off. Perfect. And then you can step out. From this, take this all the way off. Back down. Get rid of this completely. Oh wait, hold on. That is now out of the way. We are going into our half hanging series. So if you wouldn't mind scooching back just a hair, I'm going to step up here and grab the fuzzy straps. And we're moving them a little closer. Athena's going to move closer to me. Her glutes are right in front of my feet. Her feet are going off to the side. Her arms are long down her spine, and she's in that neutral spine, that little space, her low back, keeping the sacrum into the mat. From here, she is going to lift one foot onto that thigh. I'm holding it here as she lifts the other leg, and then she's going to press into a full bridge, belly button to spine, curling hips to belly button. Now I'm going to take the fuzzy strap, wrap it around, take that one foot, place it into the loop, and go into an external rotation. Toe is pointed out, heel is in, taking this other one, and then you're going to hang here. Her gaze is up to the ceiling, her palms are down to her side, and she has that little space in her low back. She's just feeling that stretch throughout her low back. And then you're pretending it's 30 seconds. And then the time is up. I'm going to take one foot. She's placing it back onto that thigh. The other foot comes out back to the thigh, and slowly articulate all the way down that spine. You can place your feet back to the mat and then scooch back once again. I am now going to get our trapeze bar. And place it here. All right, we are going into our pull-up series with the trapeze bar. She's putting those arms right onto that bar, and then she's taking one foot, placing it on to this trapeze bar, externally rotated and flexed back, Her foot is right underneath that hip. She's sitting up nice and straight and tall. From here, she's going to be holding that bar as she lifts the other foot onto this trapeze bar, flex it back, externally rotated, and she's lowering down into that V position with her body. From here, she's squeezing the glutes, lifting up until she has a straight line down her body, and then from here, she's pulling up, going into a pull-up, lowering back down, arms go long, body is long, and going back into that V. Again, you can go again. Your gaze goes up to the ceiling, squeeze those glutes, squeeze those arms, hold that grip, and lower down. We can also add the grips on, you can continue that, onto that bar if she was having a hard time keeping that grip, but she's doing great. And then you can lower all the way down. You're slowly going to hold that bar, take one foot off, sit. Great job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that is Cadillac. We are now going to be going into our one arm press. Athena is on a number 2. Her palm of her hand, her heel of her hand is right onto that pedal. The other arm, the palm or the back of the hand is going right over her forehead. She has a nice long straight line down her body, squeezing those glutes. She's pressing her heel of the hand down and letting that pedal come back all the way up. Pressing it all the way down. She's maintaining lifting up through her upper back and lowering all the way down. While we are here, we are going to go right into our swan. She's staying on a 2 for this one. Both hands are going to go on to that foot bar, that pedal, keeping her arms nice, long, and straight, her legs nice, long, and straight. She's lifting up her chest as the pedal comes up, and then as that pedal goes down, she's also lifting her legs up, squeezing those glutes. Continuing that as the pedal comes up, her legs lower slightly, lifting up the chest. As the legs go down, those legs come up as well. You have one more here, one more, and lower all the way down. Again, while we're here, we're going to take one heel of the hand to that foot bar. The other hand is going to go over the forehead. She has this nice long straight line down her body. And Athena, do you mind switching arms so we can see it? Yeah, that one, perfect. All right, from here she is going to rotate towards the front door, towards that bent arm, holding that rotation there. She's extending that arm out to a diagonal to the ceiling, taking that arm back to her forehead, and extending, back to the forehead, and then she's going to switch sides. That palm goes to the foot bar, pedal, and then she's changing, rotating now towards that bent arm, extending that arm to the diagonal, to the roof, taking that arm back to the forehead, and rotating towards the pedal. We have one more right here. She is taking that opposite arm to the forehead, rotating towards the front door, extending long, she's squeezing her glutes. Palm goes back to that forehead, and she's done with this. You're now going to slightly lift all the way up, slowly. Great job. And we're going to go into our hamstring curl. So for this, we are going to keep a 2. So we're going to keep a 2 for this hamstring curl as we do this. Athena's going to lay as if she was going into a bridge on this. Her heels are onto that pedal, and she's in that neutral spine, pressing her sacrum into that mat, keeping a little space in her low back. She's a space between her chin and chest, gaze up to the ceiling, palms are long, pressing into that mat. From here, she's now going to curl, pressing through those heels, curl that pedal all the way down, and then lift it all the way back up. Good job as she does this. She's keeping those hips nice and stable. She's placing those arms over her hips to make sure that they're not moving all over the place. You have one more here for that hamstring curl, really getting into it. All right, now we can stand all the way up. We're going into our elephant / pikes, better known as pikes. Placing both of the springs on number 2. She's going to step over to the pedal, place her toe on, press it all the way down. Both toes are going on and her heels are slightly lifted. She's holding that chair to the sides, right in the middle of it, and then her gaze is going to go towards the inner thighs as she lifts up. Belly button to spine, curl those hips towards her belly button as she lifts her hips up to the ceiling and pressing into the palms of her hands, and then she's slowly going to lower back down. We have 2 more, really pressing the palm of the hand, lifting all the way up, curling up through your abdominals, curling your hips towards your belly button, and lowering all the way back down. You have one more here, you got it. Gaze towards those inner thighs, pressing through your, doing great, and lowering all the way back down. And we are done with the chair. We are now going into our ladder barrel series. We're first going to start with these ballet stretches. So first, the leg closest to this mirror over here is going to lift up into this barrel. Her arms are long down by her side and her foot on the floor is parallel. Her toe is pointed forwards. She's sitting up nice and straight and tall. From here, she's lifting those arms up to the ceiling. And from here, she's tucking her chin to her chest, rolling over, rounding, exhaling, trying to touch that toe, really feeling that hamstring stretch, keeping those hips nice and even, and then rolling all the way back up. From here, she's going again. She's hinging over at her spine, trying to reach that toe, feeling that hamstring stretch. Her glutes are staying against that ballet bar or that ladder, and then slowly rolling back up. Arms go up to the ceiling, and we have one more here. Slowly hinging, rounding that head, trying to touch the toe, get a little deeper each time, reaching the fingertips towards the wall and rounding all the way back up. We are now going to go into our side bend. So if you want to turn around, face towards that mirror, Athena's feet are going to go up onto that ladder, and then her hips are going to go right below the arch or the apex of this barrel, and her feet are going to be on that first rung. Her bottom foot is forward, and her top foot is back. And then from here you see that she's right up on that hip bone, and then both of her hands are going to go right over her head. One palm is stacked right up on top of each other. She's keeping those hips nice and square. And then from here she's bending over, that elbow goes towards the ground and lifting back up. She's keeping those shoulders square. She does this, shoulders are away from her ears. And she has one more here. And lift all the way back up. Now from here, we're gonna go right into our prone exercises. She can now lower down, that foot is going over, and then she's going across this, and then circle back onto her stomach, onto her sides. Perfect. And then as she does this, those hips are right up, anchoring into that apex or the arch of the ladder barrel. Her glutes are engaged, lifting slightly those feet. And then her arms are to the outside on that ladder. Her gaze is right down to the floor. And then from here, she's keeping that flat back, that natural curve. And she's going to squeeze those glutes, just lifting her legs up and then lowering them down just right in line with her hips. Again, you can continue that. Keep your upper body right where it is, just holding onto that bar. You have one more here. Exhaling as you lift and lowering as you inhale. You got it. And then you can lower all the way back down. We are now going to go into our short box abs. Grabbing this dowel, Athena is going to go sitting up right in front of that apex. Her feet are on the low rung, and we're gonna have this ball just right by her feet, in between, yeah, there you go. Just in case she needs to pull up on it to keep a little safety. She's gonna be holding this dowel. And then from here, she's gonna lift the dowel up to the ceiling. Shoulders are staying away from her ears. She's going into her straight back, just hinging at her hips, back and tail, right there. And then you can lift all the way back up. She has this nice straight line down her whole back, keeping those legs nice and straight. Belly button is to spine. And you can lift all the way up. And you're exhaling all the way down. Inhaling all the way back up. And lifting all the way back up. Great, and now we're going to go into our round back with rotation. Her arms are staying up to the ceiling, and then from here she's tucking her hips, rounding back as she lowers the dowel in front of her chest. From here, she's rotating the dowel to the right, and then taking the dowel back to center and rotating it to the left. Those shoulders staying away from her ears, the dowel's right in line with her chest. And then as she rounds back up, she's lifting that dowel up to the ceiling. Again, we can go right again, lowering down, curling over, the dowel goes right in front of her chest. And then we're rotating. The dowel's right in line with those shoulders, so she's not letting the dowel go past those shoulders. Perfect. Really twisting out, she's wringing out her abdominals and lift back up. We have one more here. And rolling over, just pulling up on that ball. Keeping yourself nice and safe. And then turning once more. And then back to center. And then rounding up, lifting those up. Perfect. And then you can lower down, we can take that. And then the ball can go off to the sides. Next one here. Last one. Okay, sitting. Scissors is our intermediate and lower left rotation.
So we're gonna pull this back one, I think.
Yes, pull back and then, yes, pull back.
That way.
Oh.
She said forward. Yep.
All right, we pulled Athena's ladder barrel back as to keep a little bit closer space. When she gets on, she's wrapping that leg around the barrel, and then she's going to be facing towards the wall, and then her hands are going to be on to that barrel. Is that good, or do you think you need a little bit closer?
That's
good. Okay, perfect. Her palms are faced towards her body, and then her straight legs is she's going to lift up into a V position, so she's making a nice V. we're going into our intermediate version right here, going for our scissors. One leg lowers and one leg lifts, pointing those toes and keeping them straight, keeping a nice proud chest, squeezing those shoulder blades together, belly button is to spine, and then both legs are going together at that 45 in your V, and we're going to lower and lift into our advanced version. Both of those legs are glued together, not moving them. She's keeping her hips nice and still, not letting them rock back and forth, keeping that nice neutral spine. You have 2 more here. 1, and the last one here. Lowering all the way down, bending the knees, and we are done with the ladder girl. So we are back now on the spine corrector. We're starting with our breathing. Athena's feet are right underneath those knees. Her hands are right above the knees on those thighs. She's sitting up nice and straight and tall. Still has that little curve in her back for her neutral spine. Her gaze is right in front of her. Her shoulders are soft. From here, she's tucking her chin to her chest, exhaling as she's rolling down her spine. Her forehead goes in between those knees, and then inhaling as she slowly rolls back up her spine, sitting up nice and straight and tall. Again, you can go again. Exhaling on the way down, tucking chin to chest, rolling again. Someone's punching you in that stomach, really curving the belly button to the spine and rolling all the way back up. We have 1 more here. Tucking chin to chest, rolling down that spine, and inhaling as you roll back up. Shoulders go soft, and that is breathing. Our next one, we are going to our rotation with attitude. So Athena is going to sit onto this spine corrector facing towards the window. This thigh is going over into this thigh is going into the well, and the knee is going forwards right in front of the spine corrector. So you can bend this knee, and then this leg here is going long down beside you. So you're kind of in that mermaid position, that Z sit. If the knee bend is too much for someone who might have any knee issues, you're welcome to extend that leg long over, but Athena doesn't, so she can have that knee bent. That arm is both arms are going to move to the side, right to the arch of the spine corrector. She's holding on those handles. Again, she's still nice and tall. And then from here, she's bending at those elbows as she's lowering her chest and lifting that leg off of the mat. She has a nice long spine, and then pressing through the heel of her hand, lifting back up, lowering the leg down. Her chest is nice and lifted. As you're lowering down, that leg is simultaneously lifting up, and then pressing through the palm of your hand. She is rotated and lifting back up. We have 1 more here. Exhaling on the way down, lifting that leg, squeezing the glutes, and lifting back up, leg lowers down. Great. And so now we are going to move right into that inverted exercise. We're going into bicycle. So Athena, if you wouldn't mind stepping off the mat really quick, I'm going to take this spine corrector from you, and then you're going to lay onto the mat and go into a bridge. So the reason that we're getting into, sorry about this. I'm going to scooch it up right under there, and then you're stepping over that spine corrector. And then your feet are going parallel into that well. Her glutes are right below the arch. She's holding onto those handles, looking up at the ceiling. So the reason that we got on this way is because if someone had any back issues, getting onto that well or to the arch and then sliding down might really hurt their back. So bridging is a little bit easier way to not aggravate their back. We're going to go straight into that bicycle. Both legs are going to lift into tabletop to start, and then extend long up to that ceiling. She is in the neutral spine. She has a little space in her low back here. One leg is staying lifted to the ceiling. The other is lowering down to the open part of our Cadillac. From here, this outside leg is bending in as this leg lowers down to that open, lifting that leg back up to the ceiling, bending in and lifting up. Continue that. Both legs are staying pointed. She's lowering and bending that knee in, and you have 2 more. And last one. Here we go. Extending up, bending that knee in, lowering down. And both legs can go back to tabletop. And Feet go back down to the mat. Again, we're gonna get out the same way we got in. Lifting that spine corrector off your glutes, lowering down, articulating, slow down your spine into that bridge. Now from here, if you want to step off again, so I can place that back onto the mat, you're going onto our prone exercises. So you're going to start kneeling onto the mat right here. And then your hands are going to go onto that arch. And then bring both of your knees into the web. Now, as you do this, you're going to let your hips go right below the arch. So you're just right under the arch. I'm going to come around here to help Athena. Her legs are pointed. And then her chest is lifted. Her hands are going to go onto those forehead. The back of her hands are over that forehead. She's lifted up, squeezing those glutes, lifting up through her low back. From here, you're rotating towards the mirror. And then you're extending that top arm to a diagonal to the ceiling. That hand goes back to the forehead. And you're going back to your neutral. Now from here, rotating towards that mirror, lifting up, extending that arm to the diagonal. The hand palm goes back to the forehead and going back to neutral. Last one here, you're rotating towards the window, towards that door. In that, extend the arm goes back to the forehead, and then you're going to lower down. Hands can lower back down to the mat. And then we're gonna go straight into our sideline series here. So you are going to turn over to face towards this window here. Now because Athena has some pelvis issues sometimes with shaking around as she's doing some exercises, we are going to place this little ball in between her feet. So her hips are right onto the arch of that spine corrector. She has a nice proud lifted chest. Her bottom arm is going into that forearm. Her elbow is right underneath the shoulder. She has a nice straight line down body. Move that head there. And that trigger point ball is right in between those feet. Squeezing the glutes, the inner thighs, squeezing the belly button to the spine. She's lifting both legs up to the ceiling and lowering back down. Those legs are in line with her hip. Exhaling as she lifts up and inhaling as she lowers back down, pulling through her obliques and lifting. You have one more here. Holding on to that handle and lower. You can bend those knees, place them onto the arch, and then slowly slide down, lifting all the way up. And we are done with the spine corrector.